Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. The Culling Begins. It's the new action-packed fantasy novel written by Anthony DeGroot. It's book one of the Spirit Oak Chronicles series. The audiobook edition has just come out, and the author, Anthony, is here with me to talk all about it. Anthony, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, Corey.
Absolutely. Anthony, can you tell me what readers and audiobook listeners can expect in The Culling Begins?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to say it is this is a Christian fantasy novel that takes place on a planet called Eden, where there are 12 spirit oaks that keep the great deceiver inside of Tartarus. They stood for time immemorial, and the antagonist has finally found a way to chop them down and then kind of cue adventure from there.
Was it primarily the Christian fantasy sort of reader audience that you were going for?
Actually, no. As an author, really what I was looking at was, like, how do I make it so my book does not fail? It's kind of a way to think about it. I think that's kind of every author's hope, is that their book doesn't fail. Having it written from a Christian perspective is kind of like, easiest way to say it is it's clean. It's published through Christian Faith Publishing. You know, there's certain things I cannot have in a book, but like there's no open door scenes. You know, open bedroom scenes. There's no drug use, no excessive violence, stuff like that. Like, this is a book that I would feel comfortable with my 13-year-old picking up and reading without having to worry about anything that's inside of it as far as content goes.
Anthony, how did this book come about? How'd you get the idea for it?
So the idea for this is book one, obviously, just honestly kind of came to me. I hand wrote majority of it on an old spinal piece of paper and notepad and pen. Hand wrote it all. Probably 95% of book one. And then I realized that there was more to it that I wanted to keep telling. And I'm publishing book two, currently writing book three in the series.
Is 3 books then what you think the series is going to have then?
No, actually, I plan on more. After my first 3 books inside the series, I'm probably going to take a break from the universe that I'm creating with inside the Spirit Oak Chronicles and probably venture out onto a horror novel, actually.
Oh, wow. I love it. Anthony, prior to this, what does your writing background look like? Have you ever done anything like this?
Nothing like this, nothing to the concept of, you know, this production. My first real experience with writing was probably 6th grade. Back then, I'm going to date myself with this, but Choose Your Own Adventure were real big. And I was given an assignment by my 6th grade teacher was to write a short story that was 10 pages in length. And, you know, back then it was paper and pen. And I immediately went home, took a spiral bound notebook and numbered all my pages 1 to 200 double-sided. And I did about 35 pages front and back, just scattered throughout, of Choose Your Own Adventure style writing. Got an A+ on it, and my teacher was like, can't wait to see where this goes. And my 6th grade brain, it immediately went into the trash can. I aced the assignment, and I was like, okay, well, I'm done. And then throughout high school, like, I always kind of took an interest in, like, creative writing classes and stuff like that. I always liked the fantasy aspect, or I guess you could rather say fiction aspect of the creative writing, more so than the poetry and poems and other things like that. But just kind of going from there and, you know, kind of always at the back of my mind, kind of like an itch that needed to be scratched is kind of the way to say it. And now that I'm scratching that itch, I'm still writing.
And now you're officially a published author, Anthony. When you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect about that for you?
For me, I think it's more, the most rewarding thing that I've seen is when I saw someone reading my book and I didn't know how they got it. Was probably the coolest thing for me. I was at a book event where I was, you know, a literary event, signing books and stuff like that and getting my name out there. And someone was across the way and had a copy of my book. And I thought that was the coolest thing because it was like, I'm not an extremely big author, but I do a lot of local book events and stuff like that. So whether it was, you know, their parents picking it up for them or a friend picking it up for them or whatever, to see someone reading my book from across the way, I was like, that is awesome. When I first heard my prologue, the voice actor and how he presented the book, I got goosebumps listening to my own work because I knew where it was going. And I was like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted out of this.
Well, this sounds great, and I think a lot of readers will be into it. Again, this is titled The Culling Begins, the Spirit Oak Chronicles series, Book 1. It's written by Anthony DeGroot, and this is published by the Audiobook Network, so go everywhere that you usually go to get your audiobooks, like Audible, iTunes, Amazon. You'll be able to find this. Well, Anthony, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Author William Black has just released a powerful memoir. It's titled God Set Me Free. And that's what we're talking about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, William, is sitting here with me. William, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I'm curious to learn about God Set Me Free, William. Can you tell me about it?
Well, it's kind of a testimonial memoir. I went through a harrowing experience from a meth lab to prison and got mental psychosis and stuff.
Wow.
And God came to me kind of in a dream, and the book describes all this, of course. But he came to me and spoke to me and said, you need to write, because I was sitting in prison and a way to occupy my time and mind. And well, through the dream, he enlightened me the fact that I could write about myself or about business, you know what I mean? So it was almost like talking to a person there in my dream. So I did. I woke up the next day and I went down to the library and started on the computer and just kind of started writing and playing around a little bit. And yeah, the book just came together kind of on its own. It was amazing. I wrote it in like a little over a month, and that's doing my own editing and everything, to get it ready, the script ready. The story gives so much hope. Because in the end, God set me free literally from all those things, mental psychosis and, my time in prison, my drug addiction. I think the book will really speak to people and give people hope, especially a Christian or somebody like that, because they can relate to what I mean with the relationship with God. So I just think it's going to be powerful, helpful, especially for like addicts and people that are struggling or people that have family members that have, struggling addicts and stuff like that. So that's kind of what the book's about, but it's an amazingly powerful story, and it does give everything to God, basically, so it's great.
Sounds like quite a story you have, William. Have you ever done anything like this before when it comes to the writing thing, the publishing thing?
No, you see, I wrote a business book, and it's going to be published soon as well, but I put that together in a totally different way. I did a lot of research, and I kind of wrote it out like a business plan, and then, transferred all the information over to a book format. And that's part of the God Set Me Free, too, because that's actually where I started with my writing. I wrote that book before I wrote God Set Me Free. But I wanted to bring God Set Me Free to the public first because it's such a powerful story and it's filled with so much meaning and hope. So that was kind of my strategy.
So now you're a published author. William, when you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
To me, if I can help one person out there get over an addiction, help them with their mental psychosis, help them with getting out of prison, and, just so they can see that it's possible, will be the most rewarding part of this whole writing for me.
You said you wrote this pretty quickly, handed the manuscript off to the publisher, and then you started that editing process, the whole publishing process and everything. How long of a time period was that? Was that a longer process then for you?
Yeah, it's about a 14-month process, start to finish. There was a lot more back and forth with the editor. I had to read the book and, review everything. So it was much more involved. But just getting my story down on paper was what I meant by it only took a short period of time because, it just came flowing out of my head. I just told my story. So it came together pretty quickly in that regard.
And once you started the publishing thing, what did you find the most challenging aspect of that process?
I would say understanding the business side of it. My publication specialist was phenomenal. So, she really made it easy, but understanding the editing process and how they, review the words and how everything's broken down, it was pretty challenging to go through all that and learn all that, but it was a great experience.
And then after all that time and work that you put into this, William, that day comes and you get your first copy in, you get to hold God Set Me Free for the first time. What was that like for you?
It was jaw-dropping. I was in shock and awe, but to actually have the tangible copy in your hand is a blessing.
Do you have a routine to how you write, William? Maybe first thing in the morning, maybe late at night? Or are you the kind of writer who writes whenever you can feel that inspiration come on? Or maybe when you can just find those pockets of time to write?
I got obsessed with it it kind of consumed me. So I spent every moment I was allowed in the library to write. which is a luxury that a person in prison has, I suppose.
Well, I think this book is going to prove powerful to a lot of readers, and I encourage everyone listening right now to seek it out. Again, the title is God Set Me Free. It's written by William Black, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, William, thanks again for coming on the show, chatting with me here, telling me all about God Set Me Free. I had a nice time.
Hey, thanks. I did too. I really appreciate it.
The Heart of Nursing is the new book by Lori J. Brooks that follows her during her more than 20 years in nursing. And I'm going to find out more about this. The author, Lori, is joining me now. Lori, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm curious to hear all about The Heart of Nursing. Can you tell me what's in this book?
Sure. It's a accumulation of my nursing practice on a busy medical surgical floor, some of the patients that have been more memorable.
Were you writing this for other nurses, or did you have another sort of target readership in mind?
Yes, for other nurses.
And what sparked you to write this? What gave you the idea?
It's been in my mind for over 20 years. It just had to come out.
Before you sat down and got started on this, Lori, what's your writing background look like? Have you ever done anything like this before?
No, I haven't.
Oh, congratulations. Did this take you a long time then, being your first one?
Yes, it took about a year.
And you finish up with your manuscript, and then it's time to hand it off to your publisher, and that publishing process begins. Lori, what's the most challenging part of the publishing process for you?
Just understanding it all, figuring out step by step, but they were pretty good about it. It wasn't too hard.
And there's nothing like seeing that finished product, that thing you've been working so hard on. So eventually you open up your mailbox and there it is, your first copy of The Heart of Nursing, Lori. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was awesome. It was pretty much surreal.
And now it's official. You're a published author, Lori. To you, what's the most rewarding aspect of that?
Sharing some of the stories and wisdom I've learned over the years.
Looking down the road, maybe do you see yourself doing a follow-up to this one? Maybe some other sort of writing?
Yes, actually, I'm looking at of all things, a murder mystery set in a hospital setting.
Wonderful. I'm sure you've learned an awful lot along the way of doing this for the first time. There's just so many things involved. Do you have anything in the way of advice now that you could offer to aspiring authors who are listening to us?
Just take your time and really think about what you're writing, and don't try to rush the process.
And this is a big undertaking. There's so much involved, and it can be tough to do it all by yourself. And it helps to have a little bit of a circle of support maybe around you, people who know that you're doing this kind of thing, and they can be there for encouragement and motivation and all that. Lori, do you have people like that in your life?
Sure, my family and my friends.
Lori, what kind of a writer are you? Some writers like to write at the same time and place maybe every day, first thing in the morning or maybe late at night. Then there are other authors that like to write whenever they feel like writing, when they feel that inspiration or find that time. What kind of a writer are you?
I pretty much plan my time.
And when you're writing, do you ever encounter things like writer's block?
Of course.
How do you get through those challenges?
I usually try to read a little bit of someone else's work, get an inspiration.
And something you probably didn't think about right off the bat is what this is actually going to look like. You're so focused on the words that you're writing that things like the cover and all of that might not be something that occurs to you right away. Was it difficult to decide what your book was going to look like, especially the cover and things like that?
A little bit, yeah.
A lot of times when you're driven to be a writer, it also means you might have a love for reading as well. Lori, what kind of a reader are you?
I'm a voracious reader. I like mysteries, Jane Austen, a lot of Christian authors.
When you sat down to write The Heart of Nursing, Lori, did you have a plan, like you knew how the whole thing was going to play out, or did you just start writing your experiences and kind of see how the book went from there?
I just started writing.
Well, I think this is a book a lot of people are going to love. Again, it's titled The Heart of Nursing. It's written by Lori J. Brooks and is published by Covenant Books, so you can find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Lori, thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about The Heart of Nursing. I had a nice time.
Thank you.
It's an electrifying journey into the unknown. It's author G.B. Miller's new book titled Reliance, Tennessee, The Ultimate Conspiracy. That's what we're talking about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Greg, is here with me now. Greg, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with me.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Greg, can you tell me what readers are going to find when they open up Reliance, Tennessee?
Well, it's not exactly what most people would call a feel-good book. It's a story in East Tennessee about secret people who come out and start exposing the realities of things in our world that start upsetting some of the most powerful people on earth, and it escalates to global persecution and war eventually throughout the world.
Greg, who was your target audience here? What kinds of readers do you think would be really into this?
Well, it's really the people that are, who've been given the answers to questions that they've just never felt comfortable with. Those that need to feel that they've got somewhere they can look to find answers.
How did this come about, Greg? How did you get the idea to get started on this?
Well, I'd spent quite a large piece of my last 6 decades doing studies and researching different subjects that I've always found interesting. I'm big into history and science. And I thought, well, what a waste. I mean, what am I going to do with this? I've spent all these years looking into things, and I've had a lot of experiences that have given me a lot of information over time that most people aren't exposed to. And I wanted a way to share it with people, but I didn't know how to do it in a way that could keep them awake. So I decided to put it into a story, and that's where it started.
What does your writing background look like, Greg? Have you ever done anything like this before?
Well, I've got 5 self-published books that I've worked on years. And the way it started out, I started out with, first of all, the story. The initial story was called Am I Bigfoot? Am I Bigfoot was kind of a precursor to Reliance, Tennessee, The Ultimate Conspiracy. Then once I had that out, my son said, well, he wanted to know a little more about the characters in that book. So I followed it up with a sequel called Rewind to Reliance. But I felt uncomfortable for people having to buy 2 books to get one story, so I took them and put them in chronological order into Reliance, Tennessee, The Ultimate Conspiracy. And then I self-published that in 2019. Now, I had a couple other little books I've written along the way, some Bible study books. First one was a Bible study for Bubba's Boogerheads and Postmodern Atheists. And the second was Church Does Not Compromise.
Greg, once you sat down, got started on this, clear up until it was published, what kind of a time frame are we talking about? Was it a long time?
Well, it wasn't too bad. The thing is, it was in stages. Like I said, it came out first with the first one, first little book, and then the second one, and then putting them together into one. Now, once I had them into the one book, that's when I thought I might have something worth going to a publisher about. So that's when I submitted it to Christian Faith Publishing, and it took about a year to get everything done that needed to be done over time between editing and promoting and audiobooks and such as that.
When you think about the publishing end of things, Greg, there's a lot involved in there, a lot of things that you got to do. What's the most challenging part of the publishing end of things for you?
I'm not the youngest of men. Some of the new technology, getting used to it. Things like this, getting used to doing interviews. I'm not much of an interview person. See, the thing is about storytellers. Storytellers love to talk. They're not speakers. It's all together a different thing, but they love to talk. And that's what I do. I talk.
When that day finally came for you, Greg, and you got your first copy of Reliance, Tennessee, The Ultimate Conspiracy in, and you got to hold it in your hands for the first time, what was going through your head?
That was a very neat experience. When you first hold your book, especially in a hardback, you get a sense of accomplishment. I think it's something that you should be proud of. You put a lot of work and effort into it and time. It's a little piece of you.
When you look down the road, Greg, do you see yourself writing and publishing more?
To be honest with you, I've sat down every time I've written a book. I've finished the project. I've sat down. I said, oh, Lord, I hope I never do that again. But I've said that to myself 5 times. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Again, this is titled Reliance, Tennessee, The Ultimate Conspiracy. It's written by G.B. Miller and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it anywhere, like on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Greg, it's been really nice talking with you here tonight about your book. Thanks again for joining me.
Well, I've enjoyed it. Thank you for your time.
There's a story of the power of faith and sportsmanship in the new book that's written by D.L. Good. The book's titled Diamond Blessings, A Season of Trials and Triumphs. And the author, Denny, is here with me now. We're going to talk all about this book. Denny, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I really appreciate you being here with me.
Thanks. Nice talking to you tonight.
It's great talking with you as well. Denny, can you tell me all about Diamond Blessings and what readers are going to find here?
Well, Diamond Blessings is a story about a traveling summer baseball team made up of 16 to 18-year-old boys. The main character in the story is Scott Hayes, and he has been a long-time assistant coach and, in fact, never had aspirations to ever be a head coach. But through a series of events, he is chosen and has the opportunity to become the head coach of the Stafford Strivers. During this time, when Coach accepts this job, he tries to model his coaching style over the legendary coach that he replaced. Of course, anybody that coaches anything knows that you face a lot of decisions and challenges, and some of the things you face were unexpected. So he ends up facing a whole myriad of different decisions and challenges he has to make, both in preparation for the season and during the season itself. And of course, he relies on his faith a whole lot to help making these important decisions and sometimes facing the challenges and sometimes even really questioning himself if he has what it takes to be in this position he's in. It's not a real heavy, deep book, but it is very entertaining. You know, a big part of it starts off with all the important decisions he has to make as a head coach, picking his coaching staff and deciding how to choose the players, how many players are going to be on the team, and working with sponsors and parents and the many things that go into actually preparing for a season. And then when the season starts, it's just an amazing series of games and many things. Some unexpected things happen along the way. And that's just the way it is when you coach a season of any sport.
Denny, what kinds of readers were you writing this for?
Well, I think it's more for at least high school age or certainly adults. I don't think it's for, little leaguers or junior high kids. But this is a great story for anybody who likes baseball. It's a fantastic story, and it's not only about baseball, it's about being a Christian and coaching, relying on your faith to help you make important decisions. But if you're a baseball fan, you would love this book. But as I said, it's not just for people who like baseball. There's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of things in here that is more than just about baseball. It's about life itself. And as you know, 16 to 18-year-old kids have a whole bunch going on in their life. Mm-hmm. And when you have a group of them on a team, sometimes you have to help the kids face those issues as well as coaching them at the same time.
Denny, how did this book come about? Where'd you get the idea?
Well, I'm actually a retired school teacher, and I taught 35 years of high school English. During that time, I coached 45 different seasons of sports.
Oh, wow.
There were times I was coaching 3 sports a year. But being a high school English teacher, I graded so many papers and read so many essays and so forth and taught so many different novels that I always had a feeling that I could write something sometime. But when I retired, the Holy Spirit spoke to me. That still small voice just said, you always said you wanted to write something, go write. I had no idea what I would write or where the story would go. I just simply started writing whatever came to my mind. I wrote a couple chapters and the next night picked up where I left off, and it only took me about a month and a half to write the entire book.
Well, sounds like a book that I think a lot of readers are really going to love. Again, this is titled Diamond Blessings, A Season of Trials and Triumphs. It's written by D.L. Good and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can find it everywhere, like on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Denny, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks so much for coming on the show and telling me all about Diamond Blessings.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
The new book by Lauren Filter explores the special relationship between humans and horses. It's titled Horses Healing Hearts. And we're going to talk about this book right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Lauren, is with me. Lauren, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm curious to learn about Horses Healing Hearts. Lauren, can you tell me about it?
Absolutely. I am a lifelong horse person, and over my career with horses, it has been definitely a learning journey. Every single day I seem to learn something new, and horses have taught me a lot about leadership and how to cope with trauma. I'm also a paramedic, so my relationship with the horses taught me how to deal with the trauma at work. And then the leadership lessons that I learned at the barn, I was able to apply to work to be a better paramedic. And then I always come back to horses as I am processing through my work with humans and healing from the things that I encounter at work.
Lauren, would you say that you were primarily writing for horse people, or do you think non-horse people would like it as well?
I think it's a much broader audience. I wrote it from a perspective of being a career woman in healthcare, but also having the experience working alongside animals. I think that anyone who has experienced any kind of trauma, whether it's being a parent or military personnel or a teacher, healthcare worker, police officer, really anyone who has been a human on this planet can benefit from both reading the book and being around horses and animals in general.
Lauren, how did the idea for this come about? What sparked this book?
Well, as I said, I've been a paramedic for a really long time. I'm coming on 14 years in the industry, and I started right out of high school. So I was always calling my parents after work saying, listen to this cool story, listen to this interesting encounter I had, the patient experience that I had. And my dad encouraged me for well over a decade to write down my stories. And then eventually I finally took his advice, and it just kind of came to me from there because I was able to relate what I was learning at the time with the horses to the stories that I was writing. And I really hadn't put the two pieces together. The work was helping me with the horses, and the horses was helping me with the work. So as I started writing it down, I really kind of got this idea for the book, and I kind of write it as a cycle where I start with the lessons I learned in the barn and take it back to like the wild instincts of the horses and how horses interact with each other, the leadership lessons I learned there, and then how I applied it to my work in the hospital, in an ER setting, on an ambulance, and then, like I said, coming back to the barn as I'm processing and coping with the trauma that I saw and experienced, how those horses have helped me kind of bring it full circle.
Once you got started on Horses Healing Hearts, Lauren, how long of a journey was this for you, clear until it was published and out there for people?
The writing itself was only maybe 6 months tops. Obviously, there were several editing and revision cycles in there, but once I started the publication process, all in all, it was about 18 months from start to finish.
There's nothing like getting that finished product, Lauren. What was it like to hold Horses Healing Hearts in your hands for that first time?
It was very surreal. I will tell you that when I opened the box with my proof copies, before it was even available to the public, I almost didn't even recognize my name on the cover. I immediately showed my parents and I said, this actually happened. I'm not really sure how, but I'm officially a published author.
When you think of that, now you're a published author, Lauren, what's the most rewarding aspect of that to you?
I think when I see someone who is having a hard time in school or work or struggling with a particular leadership topic, or even horse people just get it. So I have the opportunity to say, I actually wrote a book about that. And it's helping me get to the next part of both my career and my personal journey. It's opened so many doors already, even though it's only been out for just a couple months.
Well, it sounds like horse people and non-horse people are really going to enjoy this book. Again, it's titled Horses Healing Hearts. It's written by Lauren Filter, published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing. So you can find it everywhere, like go on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Lauren, thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about this. I had a really nice time talking tonight.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Of Fresh-Cut Grass and Sassafras, What Love Is. It's the title of the new thought-provoking book written by Bruce Almeida. And we're going to be talking about that right now. The author, Bruce, is here with me. Bruce, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here, and I'm curious about Of Fresh Cut Grass and Sassafras. Can you tell me all about it?
It's a book that has a kind of a catchy name, but a lot of it has to do with a lot of revelation that I've received over the years in my life that really affected me in such a way that would be very important to the world today. The fresh cut grass and sassafras, everyone has wonderful memories about that kind of stuff. And as far as what love is, well, that's the catchy part of the book. That brings into you an understanding about those things that we like about life and the truth about what love is and how we can actually have a better life when we have that understanding.
What sparked you to get started on this? How did this book come about?
Believe it or not, the truth of the matter is I kind of always knew that I was going to write a book. I kind of always knew from the time I was a child that it would be about this. That's because of my childhood. But the way that the book was written, the way that it came out, was a product of my search for my maker and my relationship with my God. And it came up to a point in my life and some low points and that kind of stuff that really looking to God, I had realized that I needed to be a better person. And to do that, I went to the source and I kind of like presented the issue of as far as wanting to be a better person and I wanted to know how to love because essentially that's what it boils down to in life.
It sounds like a lot of readers would be able to relate to this, Bruce. Did you have a target audience that you were writing for?
Yeah, believe it or not, the target is for youth. It's important for youth today to understand truly what love is. The world has its own interpretation as to what it is, and you'll get many views of what love is. But there is truth to the basis of what love is, and there is truths about love. And once you understand its source, once you understand what it is, it kind of melts away all the other realities that are supposed to be love, and you realize what the purest sense of what love is and how to apply it in your life. The all important thing is love and relationships, and that's what the book touches on.
So this is your first book then, Bruce?
Yes, my first book.
Congratulations. Did this take you a long time to write and then put through that publishing process?
Well, actually, the book was in my mind and heart a long time prior in notes mentally, and then I started jotting down notes. But the whole compilation of the book was approximately about a year. It took about a year to complete.
And once you handed a manuscript over to the publisher, you started that publishing process. There's an awful lot involved in that. Bruce, what did you find the most challenging part of the publishing end of things?
Actually, the publishing end of it was not that bad. A first-time writer, you have to really do a little homework and you have to really do a lot of inspection on various publishers, and you got to try to pick the appropriate publisher that's going to be good for you and good for what you want to say.
Have you picked up anything along the way of doing this that you could throw out there as advice then to the aspiring authors, the other first-time authors that are listening?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I Googled quite a bit. I did a lot of research as far as who would I use. And obviously, too, you want a publisher that, is capable and has all the credentials necessary to do good things with your book. That's very important.
Absolutely. I can only imagine what was going through your head, what you were feeling whenever you got to hold the first copy of your book. What was that like for you?
Oh, absolutely. And you want to know what? I was really expecting to have a wonderful, wonderful feeling of great accomplishment. And I can tell you, yes, I did to a degree. But more important to me was the hope. I had it in my hand. Here it is. And now the hope starts. And I'm hoping that there are people who are going to read the book. And I'm hoping and praying that from it, there'll be thought-provoking things that will help them change their lives for the good. And that's really where it's still there right now. The accomplishment is there and that good feeling is there, but the hope is even more driven now. The hope that more people will read it and really get something good from it.
I love it. I think the youth and a lot of other readers are definitely going to get a lot out of this book. The title again is Of Fresh Cut Grass and Sassafras, What Love Is. It's written by Bruce Almeida and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So go on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick and mortar stores. You'll be able to pick it up. Well, Bruce, thanks again for coming on the show and chatting with me. I had a really nice time.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Author Brenda J. Stevens reflects on her spiritual journey of growth and discovery. It's in her new book titled Love, the Missing Ingredient. And Brenda is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. We're going to talk all about this book. Brenda, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Brenda, can you tell me all about Love, the Missing Ingredient? What can readers find here?
Well, it is a piece of work I'm glad to say that I finally completed obediently to God. He told me to write this book. He first spoke to me to write it in 2003. I hesitated, procrastinated for 3 years. I sat down and decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and write the book. After hearing, I asked God, are you sure you want me to do it? And I had one preacher say, God is telling somebody to write the book. I said, okay. My pastor, write the book. I said, okay. But I still procrastinated, and I was still questioning God. Then I said, well, what if I write the book and it doesn't sell? And he spoke to me through another of my favorite preachers, and he said, write the book even if it never sells. So I set myself down to write the book. It wasn't easy. I think I went through a lot of spiritual warfare from 2006 to 2009, but I finally got it completed in 2009.
Brenda, what sorts of readers were you speaking to here?
Well, I'm speaking to all those, and I actually say that in the first chapter of my introduction. I want anybody who seeks or shun church life. And when I say the church experience, I'm talking about going to the brick and mortar church and congregating with God's people. I've been through a lot. My family has been through a lot. There was times when I dropped out of church. I finally decided I want to learn how to live right according to what I was taught growing up. So I want to get back into church. My attempts to get back into church were ill-fated, bad experiences. So it took me a very long time to really get back into church and get back to really studying my Bible and learning how God wants me to live this life. And that's what I write about.
Love the Missing Ingredient. Is this your first book then, Brenda?
Yes, it is my first book. I'm working on others. I have a couple of journals where I've started, and when I get thoughts, I write into those journals. But this is my very first endeavor.
Congratulations. It's such a huge deal to get that first one out there, Brenda. And now it's official. You're a published author. When you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
The most rewarding aspect is that I did it. I received God's word. It took me a while. I procrastinated, but I pushed past the procrastination, past all of the difficulties I incurred spiritually, incurred in the church. I set myself to do it, and I finally completed it.
This book was a long time in the making, like you told me, and finally that day came and you got your first copy in the mail, and you were holding Love the Missing Ingredient for the very first time, Brenda. What was that moment like for you?
It felt good. It felt good. You know, it's like getting my degree. I started my bachelor's degree in accounting, and it took me 30 years to complete it. I became a single mother of 2 children, working different jobs, trying to provide for my family, myself, and even others around me until I had to move away from my hometown and get focused. When I walked down the aisle, when I walked up to get my bachelor's degree, it was exhilarating. When I completed this book, when I actually got this book in my hands and saw the completed work, it was exhilarating.
Brenda, what did you find the most challenging part about the publishing end of things for you?
The one thing that made Christian Faith Publishing made me decide to work with them, those who wanted to publish it previously would take control of my intellectual property. I didn't like that. That made me back off. God led me to Christian Faith Publishing.
I think so many readers are going to find this book a blessing, and I encourage everyone listening to seek it out. Again, this is titled Love, the Missing Ingredient. It's written by Brenda J. Stevens and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it everywhere, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Brenda, it's been really nice chatting with you here tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
The new book by Ray Anderson. It's an exploration of deep spiritual questions and biblical truths. It's titled, With the Almighty, Nothing Succeeds Like Failure. This is Volume 2, and we're going to talk all about it right now. The author, Ray, is here with me now. Ray, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Ray, can you tell me all about With the Almighty, Nothing Succeeds Like Failure?
This is the second volume. The first volume was something similar, but we're dealing with the first dispensation, second dispensation, and third dispensation. The first volume was all about God. The second volume was about his son. And we are dealing with the intelligence of phenomenon. Phenomenon is the soul that's in man. And this is mainly what the three commentaries is all about. With the soul of man, this is what's in man that keeps him going because the soul never dies. That makes the intelligence of God that's within us. And this is how we communicate with God.
Ray, what sorts of readers did you have in mind when you were writing this?
The family. The world was made for the family to occupy and inhabit, dwell in. Without the family, there would not be any need of the earth. This is why he made it. He dressed it for human inhabitant. And this is why it's very important that we get it.
Ray, what was the spark? What made you decide, hey, I want to sit down, I want to get started writing these?
When I started, I really didn't know I was starting to go into anything like this. But there were questions that was coming up, and I had a dream at one time, and the dream never would leave me. And I would dream that the Lord was coming toward my home, and I wasn't ready to go back with him. That stayed with me. And then I started being inquisitive of who God is. Why are we here? All of the elements that's happening. What's happening in the world. This stayed with me. Well, I was also thinking that why would the Lord let me start reading at 3 years old? And I was a sickly person because I had hay fever so bad I couldn't play outside. And that drove me, well, during that time, we didn't have a TV. And if I would go outside in the summertime, I would sneeze, and 12 and 13 times every time I sneezed. Seemed like I never would stop. And so I made myself comfortable in my home by reading the dictionaries. We didn't have TV. We had encyclopedias. And this is what I started dealing with. And I found out years later as to why I was doing it.
Before you started on these, Ray, have you ever written before or been published?
Well, in 55 years of ministry, I wrote a lot of things. I was over an evangelistic association, so we used cassettes and discs. But I never did just take the time to turn my writings into books until well over 30 years ago. And when the questions came up, I noticed that in doing a study, you would have to accomplish 6 things: who, what, when, where, how, and why. And through those studies, I started dealing with and trying to find out, why would God make us? Why would he go with us? And why would he love the family so much? This was always nagging at me. And the only time I would get any relief is when I was writing. And I was wanting the world to know some of the thoughts that went through my mind during this time. As I was reading, the 6th chapter of Genesis caught my mind when it says that every thought that man had was only evil continually. And I was wondering about that. I said, how in the world could a person not think of God at any time? And that's what motivated me to keep going.
Again, this is titled, With the Almighty, Nothing Succeeds Like Failure, Volume 2. It's written by Ray Anderson, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can grab it up anywhere, like head over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes and traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Well, Ray, thanks again for coming on the show and letting me know all about this. I had a nice time talking with you tonight.
All right, thank you.
There's a new novel that just came out. It's written by Daniel Genovese. It's titled Chimera. And I'm going to find out all about this book. The author, Daniel, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Daniel, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm curious about Chimera. Daniel, what can readers expect here?
Chimera is a story about a 16-year-old girl, Kimberly DiNapoli. She gets a chance to go on an archaeological dig in Greece, but she gets separated from her friends and stumbles upon a hidden burial site and touches something she probably shouldn't and turns herself into the mythological Chimera. Soon after, she finds she's hunted by the descendants of ancient mythological heroes, like Perseus and those type of people.
Being that the protagonist is a 16-year-old Daniel, is that sort of the reading audience that you were going for?
Yes and no. I think it appeals to teens and above. I've had a lot of good feedback from adults. I didn't write it to appeal only to teens. I wrote it as I would to any adult as well, so I didn't write down or dumb it down in any way. So hopefully it's got a broader appeal than just teens.
And I love the story. This is really original. What sparked this? Where'd you get the idea?
I have had her as an idea for a character for a long time. I think I originally created her for a pen and paper role-playing game, like a superheroes game, and she kind of evolved into, different versions over the years, and this kind of became her final evolution.
Have you ever done anything like this before, Daniel? Writing, publishing, any of that?
I have one book published before this. It's very different. It's a fantasy novel called The Crimson Rose. A lot of political intrigue and that kind of stuff.
Once you sat down, got started on Chimera, how long of a journey was this for you, clear up until it was published and got out there?
Probably about 2 years.
And the publishing process, man, that's something that a lot of people are surprised with that first time that they go through it. There's just a lot of hoops you got to jump through. When it comes to that end of things, Daniel, what's the most challenging part of it for you?
In the actual process, I'd say patience. It doesn't just happen. You get the publisher and then everything takes time. So it's probably, 8-10 months before you actually get the book in your hand and go through all the editing and that sort of thing. So, realizing it's going to take a while.
A lot of time, a lot of work goes into this, but then that day finally comes for you and you open up the mailbox. There it is, the finished product, Chimera. You hold it in your hands, Daniel. What was that like for you?
It was weird. I'm not sure if I wanted to cry or laugh, but I definitely had one of those, grins on your face that, you can't wipe off. I had to keep on looking at it, make sure it actually existed.
But when you think to yourself, hey, I'm a published author, Daniel, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
I think the most rewarding is when somebody comes up to me and says they really enjoyed it, and then asking when the next one's coming out.
That was my next question, too. When is the next one coming out? Do you have a follow-up maybe to this one planned or some other kind of book?
I am working on the sequel, yes.
Excellent.
I don't know exactly when that's going to come, but I feel like I've made myself kind of a world here that has a lot of possibilities.
Doing all this can be quite the learning experience. Daniel, do you have any advice now that you could throw out there for the aspiring authors who are listening?
I would say don't let someone tell you can't or shouldn't write it, whatever book you have. Rejections hurt. I know, but the publishing industry has changed so much, even just, last, 5, 6, 10 years, whatever. So there's so many more options than just the traditional, try and get the agent and then try and get the book deal from the big traditional publisher. There's more ways than just that in getting your book out there. I know there's kind of a stigma against, I assume there's still a stigma against self-published or hybrid published authors, but, you wrote it and you put it out in the universe. If just one person buys it, you're a professional writer. So I try not to be discouraged or get caught in that kind of mindset.
Daniel, do you ever have to deal with writer's block?
Yes. I walk away, do something else, watch TV, go outside, play with the cats, that kind of distract yourself. And then I daydream. I run stories through my head like I'm watching a movie. That kind of helps.
I think a lot of readers are going to love this book, and I encourage those listening to check it out for sure. Again, this is titled Chimera. It's written by Daniel Genovese, and it's published by Newman Springs Publishing, so really you can get it everywhere, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Daniel, this has been really good talking with you here tonight. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you. It was great.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.